Okay, so this is the prophecy of the prodigal son. I'm gonna go ahead and show you how the prodigal son is an analogy of the northern and southern kingdom. So this Luke chapter 15, verse 11. And he said, a certain man had two sons. So as we know, Israel belongs to God, right? So this is an analogy of God having two sons, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Okay. And verse 12, and the younger of them said to his father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. So notice the northern kingdom is going to be explained as the younger. The southern kingdom is going to be the older son. The reason being is because the head of those two kingdoms is Ephraim and Judah. Judah being the southern kingdom, he's the oldest of all the 12. He is in Genesis. And in Ephraim, which is Joseph's youngest son, is the youngest of the 12. He's like decades younger than Judah. Okay. So it says here the northern kingdom asked his father to give me my portion of goods that falleth to me, and he divided unto them his living. And as we know, he left. So this is explaining the fall of the northern kingdom, how they split from Israel, right? God closed them out, and they dispersed themselves among the nations or the heathen and whatnot, and they left. Essentially, they weren't a part of the family anymore. They weren't a part of the covenant. Verse 13, and not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. So when it says wasted his substance, it's talking about wasted his people, wasted the culture, wasted his seed, because he wasn't living the righteous life that God, his father, had showed him how to, right? Verse 14, and when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in the land and began to be in want. Now, what we know, the scripture is nourishment to our soul, nourishment to the spirit. We explained in Ephesians 5 verse 26 that water is explained as the commandments. So there's a analogy of food and water being nourishment to our body. God said, when he was talking to Satan on his fast, that we will not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of this Bible, right? So when it says there was a famine, he began to lose wisdom. He began to lose the commandments and lose his way of how God had brought him up, right? And he began to starve for that, right? After you stop following the commandments, bad things start happening to you. This famine also was spiritually and physically. So when he started losing the commandments, start forgetting them. Maybe he forgot that we're not supposed to like cut our beards. He just forgot that. And then also a famine of like, hey, you're not following the commandments. Now I'm going to start bringing terror among you, right? For the northern kingdom. So this is what started happening when that famine started coming in. Verse 15, and he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine, right? And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. So as you can see, now he's at the lowest of the low, right? He's at the lowest point of the low. So this swine is an analogy of heathen, like a certain people or a nation of people, where the northern kingdom had joined themselves unto them, right? And they're essentially eating from the same pot, right? He's filling his belly with husk, right? So this analogy of them becoming one, right? This is that last point to where they start mixing themselves with the heathen, right? With these swine. So at that point, that's when they started mixing with the other multitude. Okay. And we know Northern Kingdom is famous for that in the scripture. So this is that what this portion of the analogy is referring to. Now, let's go to verse 17. And when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father have bread enough and to spare? And I perish with hunger. So now he's starting to think himself. He's like, man, back home, the servants, the people that's not even our people that live among us are treated way better than how I'm treated. And I'm royalty. Like, oh my gosh, like, what's going on? Verse 18, I will arise and go to my father and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy servants. So as you can see, like the Northern Kingdom said, hey, I'm not even royalty anymore. I've spent all my inheritance. I've lived as the heathen. I even mixed it with the multitude. I'm not worthy anymore. Right? I'm not a part of the kingdom. I'm not a part of the fold anymore. At least let me live in the outskirts of the land. At least let me live in the Samaritan. At least let me be as one of the servants so I can at least like drink the dew that falls off the hill. Like I just need some relief. Right? So the Northern Kingdom is now seeing themselves not as a people anymore, but just a servant, like as a slave. He sees himself as a heathen now, right? So let's see, where were we? Here we go. Verse 19, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. Right? So this is this analogy right here is now this is the explanation of Northern Kingdom turning back from their wicked ways, right? Repenting of themselves, turning back to the God, turning back to his commandments. And when he sees that, he reached out his arm to him. How did he reach out his arm? How did he run to him? By bringing his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross, right? Because at this point, like back in the Old Testament, back in the law of Moses, they were doing things that were unforgivable, right? There was no way for them to be a part of the fold anymore. They were a stranger, right? God did cut them off. So the only way that God can bring them back is by Jesus Christ dying, being the eternal sacrifice, right? Dying and being rose again, right? And doing away with the law of sacrifice, because he is the eternal sacrifice. The law of sacrifice, with the law of sacrifice still put into play, there was no way for them to come back, because they weren't following the ordinances for years. If you look up ordinances, it's referring to law sacrifices and all the offerings and type of rituals that you had to do back in old times, which the Northern Kingdom was not doing, right? So after they returned and repented, God sent Jesus to die for them so they can have a chance to come back into the fold. That's the analogy of God running to them, right? All praises. Let's keep reading. Verse 21, and the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in the sight. See, this is a repentant heart, a humble heart in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But his father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. This is the celebration that we're looking for, right? Because they are worthy. Verse 24, for this my son was dead. He was dead and is alive again after the sacrifice of Christ. He was lost and is now found. And they began to be merry. Now his elder son was in the field. Mind you, okay, so the Southern Kingdom was a part of the fold the whole time, right? Benjamin, right? Levi, Judah, those tribes were a part of the fold the whole time, doing the law of sacrifice, doing the ordinances, doing the wave offering, doing the peace offering, right? Doing all of those sacrifices and killing all the calves, etc. Right? So what did the southern kingdom have to say about this once they heard news? Let's see. Verse 25. Now his eldest son was in the field, and as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. What did he say? Verse 26. He called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. Right? So verse 26 is an analogy of the southern kingdom when they seen Christ, right? Explaining what was going to be done, what was being done with his sacrifice, right? And he called one of the servants and asked him, what do these things mean? And the servant told him, hey, God sent his son to go ahead and die and be sacrificed. We don't have to keep the law. We don't have to keep the law of Moses anymore. All we have to do is believe on Jesus Christ, and all will be saved. That's in Israel, right? And by default, that means that the northern kingdom is able to come back into the fold again. What did they say? What did the southern kingdom say after hearing these? Because mind you, they were doing the law of sacrifice the whole time, which are very hard to do. Let's see, where were we? Verse 28. What did he say? He said, and he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. God had to come to them, right? Verse 29. And he answering said to his father, lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends, right? Man, I've been following the laws of Moses and doing all these crazy, wave offer, all these hard things all these years. And you never did this for me. You never came back in this sort of way like me. You never sent your son to die so I can come in. How come I can't do X, Y, Z? You know what I mean? That's how they were feeling. They didn't want to believe it because it says in EPHRAIM, it says that in Hosea chapter 7, it says Judah vexed Ephraim, right? They looked down upon them. They say, man, you're a heathen. You're not part of the fold, because they weren't. But at the same time, they vexed them because of it. And because Judah vexed Ephraim, Ephraim envied Judah, right? I don't want any dealings with them, right? So there was always animosity between them, right? Very malicious. And there's scriptures in the Old Testament explaining those interactions. But this is what was going on right here. So let's go to verse 30. But as soon as this thy son was come, which have devoured thy living with harlots, right? Keyword harlots, because they were mixing. Thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. So all praises. That's how the prodigal son refers to the northern and the southern kingdom. All praise to the Most High. I hope that you got something from that, but just wanted to share. Thanks.